So it's not very often that after a show I am left speechless, but I certainly was after this one. After it ended, I just sat there trying to process what had happened, and it was fantastic. How's it going, everyone? I'm Keegs, and Cyberpunk Edgerunners is not just a show, I don't think, but truly a work of art. This show is very graphic between gore, sex, and language, so if those things are not for you, then this will probably instantly turn you off. But if you don't mind those things, then you should definitely check it out, because this is one hell of a show. The animation is beautiful, the soundtrack is perfect, it feels like it was made just for this show, and it's surprisingly heartfelt. I mean, you can really feel the pain and emotion of all these characters. From here on out, though, we are talking spoilers, so consider yourself warned. So from the very start, you had to know that his mom was going to die, because what other way would push David to chrome the fuck up other than his mom dying? And I really appreciate the way in which she died. I mean, basically, they were just too poor to live because he couldn't afford the procedures that they needed to save her life, which I think is really interesting, and it also kind of explains why he wants so many eddies, and he's very determined to make a lot of money in the later episodes, especially between the last episode when he ends up going on some crazy heist, because, you know, that's just kind of who he is. He's just out there doing the grind, trying to make money. I was really sad to see Maine go, and I would have liked to see a little bit more time with David when he was taking over the responsibilities of Maine and how he became leader of the group, because I felt like there was a pretty big time jump there, and he went from a kid that nobody really trusted to literally their leader and their dude that like had everything on lock and under control for every job they were on, pretty much. The only other thing I really wished I had seen in the show was David using his brain more. They talked about how he was top of his class and really smart in Arasaka Academy, but nowhere else throughout the season did they really use that to their advantage. He mostly just brute strength everything, and you didn't see him use his brain and his intelligence, because we know he's supposed to be really, really smart. And there's a couple things. Maybe it's trying to say that the more you chrome up, the less you use your brain and the more you use your brute force, because he kept kind of doing things that were a little stupid, like, you know, getting too much chrome and getting the shakes and things like that. But also maybe they were trying to imply that the only way you survive this long in Night City is if you have some smarts about you. But again, even if it was implied that that's what it was, I would have liked to see some more explicit uses of his actual intellect, because I think that was an interesting aspect of David that we never really got to explore further. Also, I have no idea why you would ever be a cop in Night City. That just seems like a horrible gig. I mean, you are almost guaranteed to die in a horrific way, I'm pretty sure. Their benefits must be insane, or they have to be like conscripted to that or something, because who in their right mind would ever go against a cyber psycho? The action sequences were really well done and especially brutal, and I really, really loved how they showed people slipping in and out of cyber psychosis, and it was really them walking a line. It wasn't a switch that all of a sudden one day they're fine, one day they're not. There are signs leading up to you becoming fully cyber psycho, and it's not a hard fast rule, though once you do go fully there, you can't reel yourself back, I guess. But I do like how they showed the slow, gradual movement there, and pretty much everybody in the show that we saw go cyber psycho, there were signs before they even got there, which I really thought was interesting and great character development. The relationship between Lucy and David was probably one of the best aspects of the show, and we really could see how much they cared for each other, because I think they both tried to sacrifice themselves at multiple points for the other, and obviously we know David ultimately prevailed in sacrificing himself to save Lucy. The motivations of all the characters were kind of really interesting to me, though, because as I was watching, all I could think was, what are their motivations? What are their goals? What are they trying to accomplish here? And basically the answer came out to be nothing. They're just living their life trying to make money and just live in Night City. And I thought, well, that's kind of an aimless, directionless like path that they're on. But it was tied together so absolutely perfectly in the end when David talks to Lucy and says, hey, I don't have a plan. I have no real goals other than making sure that you're okay. And that really, to me, tied the whole series together. They acknowledged that David doesn't have any goals or aspirations other than helping Lucy. But Lucy had that one goal of going to the moon. But I just really appreciated that they acknowledged the fact that the characters didn't have any particular goals or aspirations, and they weren't working towards anything until that very last moment when David ends up giving his life for Lucy, and it's like he's finally made a goal for himself and a point to his whole existence, which is to save this one girl at that one moment, which I thought was perfect. I just loved how that was done. He ends up getting killed by Atom Smasher at the end, and obviously if you've played the game, you know that Atom Smasher can't die right there quite yet. It's a minor spoiler for the game if you haven't played that yet. But I was hoping it was going to be a little bit better of a fight, because it wasn't really a fight. It was mostly just David running away from Atom Smasher and trying to get Lucy to safety. I kind of wanted a little scenario where David, before he went cyber psycho, was able to think and take on Atom Smasher head on head, at least for a short amount of time, until he ultimately died by Atom Smasher. But I would have liked a more like head on head battle, David in his prime versus Atom Smasher in his prime, because I think that would have been a really fun fight. The way it worked was fun too, and he ultimately accomplished his goal of saving Lucy, which was all that really mattered to him. But just for my own enjoyment, I would have liked to see a little bit more proactiveness on his fighting skills. But he kind of didn't even really throw a punch. He had like one gravity move that he like pulled him down on. But other than that, he got stabbed at the very beginning, or shot at the very beginning of that fight, and never really did any more damage to Atom Smasher. Whereas I feel like he could have actually done some real good damage. Also, David dies at the end, but he hasn't slipped fully into cyber psychosis yet either. So really, he is actually special, but I think the point of the whole show is to show that Night City does not give a fuck if you're special or not, because you're gonna die anyway. Whether or not you have a slightly higher tolerance, in the end, it doesn't really matter, because that city just eats you alive, and there's no real escape in it. I was not expecting Rebecca to die there at the end in almost the most meaningless way in the whole show, where all of a sudden out of nowhere she just looks up and Atom Smasher's there and just steps on her and she dies, which it was a little sad because there was literally no purpose to that. But I guess if you think about it, Kiwi didn't really have a purpose to her death either. She betrayed all of her friends, and for it, all she got was being shot in the head. I mean, I know she was promised some money, but she didn't get that, obviously, and she was just killed. So really, I guess the whole purpose is that all of the characters in Night City die meaninglessly, with the exception of David, because he died at the very end just like the other ones, but he actually had a purpose, and just before he died, he found a goal and a meaning to his death, and I think us as the audience also found that meaning, so his death felt just a lot less bad, honestly, because he fulfilled what he was out there trying to do. Ironically, I enjoyed this show so much that it kind of makes me want to pick up the game again, since I haven't really touched it since my initial disappointment at launch. But I mean, I kind of got to get back in there to avenge my boy David. Let me know what you thought about the show though, and if there were a second season of Cyberpunk, what would you want it to be about? And is there anybody you would want it to follow more closely? Would you want it to be set after the events of Cyberpunk 2077? Because I kind of would. But anyways, I'm Keegs. I hope you enjoyed this, and hopefully I will catch you all next time for some more Cyberpunk content.